kéré o, wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa, àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Hey, Osinachi, I'm no kwa, Osinachi. Money, Osinachi, I'm watching. Hey, Osinachi, mama, Osinachi.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa, àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Hey, Osinachi, I'm no kwa, Osinachi. Money, Osinachi, I'm watching. Hey, Osinachi, mama, Osinachi.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa, àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, I'm no qua, Osinachi. One man, Osinachi, I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi. Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, I'm no qua, Osinachi. One man, Osinachi, I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi. Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Hey, Osinachi, Namnukwa, Osinachi. One lemon, Osinachi. I'm watching.
Very lovely.
Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
I'm not sure if because I can't mute that background. How are things?
Fine, thanks.
How was the first session for you yesterday?
Yeah, it went very well. So the second one is this evening.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll be joining. Yeah, great.
It was really, really validating.
Yeah, I'm sure. Was there anything surprising that came up?
Malik actually said, that I was shipping in the form of Akimabo Guje, and I thought, wow, that's really...
I hope someone was recording it for you.
No, they recorded the session. They're recording the whole conference, so I will ask for it afterwards.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good.
I thought that was really, really big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tom is going to join us. He just said he's. But he'll be on the general participant link. But people can they?
No, give him your link. You can give him your link.
Oh, okay. It's not okay. That's fine. Let me do that.
Because the participants can't talk.
Right. Okay.
Mm.
How do I?
Just share your normal link. You can share the link from the email.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Hey, Osinachi, Namnukwa, Osinachi. One lemon, Osinachi. I'm watching. Hey, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
Yeah, so I think that's a good idea. We'll just talk about what we've achieved so far. Would you like to summarize that, and then I'll sort of share the reflections?
Okay.
Okay.
So how many participants have we had? I think we started with 12 and we're down to 10 or so.
I think we started with 15 and then 15. We went back down to 12.
Okay.
Let me
so
just
we have
check.
12. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, because now we have 12. And yeah, we had the blog series. And then yeah, it's a real shame Demi can't speak because her paper's really interesting. And then
yeah,
I don't know if Fasarat can come, but sort of her international fellowship, which just is great, and that's kind of from the partnership. I am interested to see what the participants think about the mentor relationships, because I think Michaeli, Malik and Tom they've been worried that, you know, they haven't had very many meetings, but I think people haven't been seeking them out. So it'd be interesting to see, like,
for many of them, it's the busyness of other responsibilities.
Yeah.
And for some, well, one of them said oh, I'm ashamed because I haven't been able to do what I need to do. So when I'm ready to submit, then I will reach out again.
Yeah, which is not the case. People can always, that's part of the mentor relationship, is that encouragement. But it is hard to show up with not enough work, I suppose.
I think one of the things that we can actually speak about is, irrespective of the challenge, it's also the mentorship process guides you through those not so good times.
Yeah. Yeah, it's guidance, yes. Yeah, I suppose it's the expectation of that relationship, isn't it? Yeah. But so what stages are the strikes at the minute?
So the National Union is negotiating with the federal government, but it's obvious the government is not as forthcoming as they ought to be. Yeah.
Do they? What are the main demands of the union?
We just want to renegotiate our salary scale.
Because that hasn't changed in how long?
17 years.
Wow. Where's the chat gone? Yeah.
So I've asked
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast.
Yeah, just trying to get Tom. I mean, it might show up as his name being. Oh yeah. Hi.
Okay.
Tom, you're
Sorry, I
the
did the wrong link.
Lindsay.
How are you doing?
Good. Do you know how we can stop the music from the background slide? Oh, it stopped. Okay.
I was quite enjoying it. Get in the mood.
Yeah.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, how are you doing? You all right?
Fine, thanks. Thanks for the other day.
No, it was a pleasure. I'm sorry I had to leave early. I had this pre-existing family commitment, but thank you for inviting me, or for them for inviting me. Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I did. It was really, really validating is the word.
That's great.
Really validating, yeah.
And there's another one, right? Is it today?
Yeah,
I didn't realize it's
that
you.
panel, so.
Yeah, I hadn't
Looking
taken
forward
in
to
that
it.
there were two. Yeah, I might not be able to make that one, unfortunately, but I hope that's good as well, and equally validating. I'm sure it will be.
Yeah.
It says there's 5 participants, so I'm not sure if it's just us.
I think it might just be us, yeah.
There's one other person.
I have sent it to all the participants, so hopefully they'll join with, there'll just be lots of Lindsay Sawyers.
Is it, I'm imagining that the LSA conference is happening in evenings and on the weekend a lot, so people can attend. Is that the idea? Or is it just coincidence? Because all the panels I've been involved in or seen have been evening or on Saturday.
Yeah, so it starts at, I think, 2:00 in the afternoon to allow for the US participants.
Oh, okay.
And traditionally it's been Thursday to Saturday. But I think, given the apathy for virtual meetings now, people are just going about their Saturdays.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different when it's virtual. Somehow you don't mind spending your Saturday in a conference when everyone's there. It's also social, but online people are getting on.
I mean, just seeing all those pictures that they were scrolling through. It really, it's such a shame it's not in
It makes you a
person.
bit sad.
Yeah.
I just tried to get myself vaguely in a feeling by having some Nigerian egg stew, which I just made myself.
Oh, wow.
Just a poor second to actually being there, but
I thought you were going to say you made yourself some bad coffee, so it'd be like a conference.
no, I could have done that. I have a cup of tea, but
Yeah. Well, maybe until everyone arrives, we could just talk about the workshop, and because I think now tie back with, we could make it 3 or 4 days, couldn't we? The Monday to the Thursday. And
Yeah.
I think that's much better, because I think we should do some proper sort of exercises, or just, you know, get people talking to each other, because I think the participants have been really keen to properly network. So if we can find sort of common interests and things like that, and then have more on their actual work, like, and at whatever stage, like we were saying, that it doesn't have to be a paper, that it could even be like an idea, or
Yeah.
I think.
so this is in July, end of July, or late.
18th to the 21st, I suppose.
Okay. The good thing is, so I won't be able to come in person, unfortunately, but I'm here. So the week after that, I go on leave, but I'm around that week. So I put it in the diary, but yeah, as soon as we get some kind of times. But yeah, I think that would be good. I was looking back at my engagement with mentees, and there were a couple who, you know, we had some engagement with over email, but then obviously they couldn't manage to finish the paper, but there were some who clearly weren't able to engage at all. So I think the more we can emphasize, you know, that they don't have to have a paper. It could even be about working to a much longer term agenda, or yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking about how to kind of get people back involved who weren't able to work on a paper.
Yeah, I think we were just talking about that it's like in normal times it's really hard to make time for writing, and then with the pandemic and then the strikes and lots of things going on, I think a lot of people, Tybert was saying, they feel ashamed that they can't come with anything to a meeting, so they just don't arrange one. So I think it's maybe about like explaining what a mentorship is, you know, it's guidance and encouragement, and not like an exam supervisor sort of relationship.
Yeah. By the way, I'm just, because there's obviously some attendees in the other room who we can't see, but I guess they can see us. Like,
Yeah.
Because we've got that dual track Zoom going on. So there's 4 people I can see, but I think they can't speak, and we can't see them, because when I use the other link,
they are actually.
Yeah, so.
Okay, can they see the chat?
Did you get a message from me before I came in here saying, can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's when I was in the other room. So I guess if they use the chat, we should be able to see it. There's the Q&A and the chat. This is Zoom webinars or whatever it's called, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And I don't think it works at all. It's so impersonal.
It's not, yeah, in a small group, it's a shame, isn't it? Like, I mean, maybe when you have these things with hundreds and hundreds of people, but for now, it would be nice to have everyone in the same room.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. I've put that. There is someone that's not Paul Sprout, hello, is not part of the thing, but I think it's fine if everyone can join.
I think, yeah, just in case anyone can hear us and isn't seeing the chat.
Yeah, so I was keeping an eye on it. I didn't realize it was just
there's panelists and then participants. Yeah. So anyone who's attending and can hear us but doesn't have access to the microphone and can't turn on a camera, please do use the other link that Lindsay sent, because then you'll be able to participate more fully. And I think in a smallish group that would be better. So use the link Lindsay's put in, because I can see people are coming. I'm a bit worried that people who join now won't be able to see the chat from before. So you might have to keep pasting it.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think we can start now.
Yes. There's people leaving, so hopefully they're going to try and rejoin.
Hmm.
So are we not getting?
Okay.
Ah, brilliant.
Okay, thank you.
Is we don't have Michele or Malik.
No, Michele, it's his session right now, and then Malik is in Marseille, and Oloduku, she is flying to Ghana right now. So
okay.
Just a difficult time. And Zarina is on study leave, so she actually could never participate, but I didn't take her off the program, but she's she's still willing, if she can, to come to the workshop.
Well, we'll see how we go. We don't have to use the full hour and a half, I suppose. We can just have a kind of freewheeling chat for as long as people come.
Okay, so hi everyone who's joined and attended. The LSA host should have given you all the option to join in and speak. So if you can turn on your video, I'm not sure if that's an option, but that would be really great as well. So the format of the meeting is that we will, people keep dropping out rather than.
I mean, I think they can hear. I think everyone can hear, can't you?
Okay. Yeah. So the format is that we will just reflect on what the process has been so far and what we've achieved through these writing workshops, and then we'll move on to more of a reflection about the process, about the challenges and positives that have come up, and then really hopefully hearing from the participants themselves to reflect on the goals of these workshops and what they highlight in the issues of knowledge production, and then also just the nuts and bolts of carving out time to write. And then we have Tom Goodfellow here, also from the University of Sheffield, who's been one of the mentors. And Tom, if you could, as we were just talking about, reflect on the mentorship process and what that relationship can be beyond just offering comment on work, and then any other wider reflections. So Prof. Tybert Laurenson will open with a reflection on the process so far. So if you'd like to take it away.
Thank you very much, Lindsay, and hello everyone. It's a small room, so I'm sure we'll have time to really engage on the issues. Sometime in 2018, Lindsay and I had this brainwave of bringing together Nigerian-based researchers working in the area of urban studies and who are thinking of publishing in high-impact journals and especially tackling some of the knotty issues of urban development, and especially through a critical lens. And we're fortunate enough to have a call at the time from the British Academy, and we were fortunately, successful in applying and getting support from the British Academy to host these workshops. That was in 2019, later on in the year. And then COVID happened, so we were unable to move on as we wanted. We started with a group of 15 researchers. Along the line, 3 of them dropped off for various reasons, and currently we have a cohort of 12 researchers from various disciplines, various universities across Nigeria in the area, specialists in the area of political science, economics, urban and regional planning, architecture, geography, estate management, and what have you. We have colleagues from universities as far as Kano, Zaria, we have from University of Jos, universities in the East. We also have from Obafemi Awolowo University and also the University of Lagos. The objective was really to get this cohort to start to think about, urban development or urban studies in Nigeria, particularly from a critical lens. What are the issues? How do we tackle them? And how do we look forward, ensuring that our scholarship and somebody needs to mute themselves. Yeah, thank you. So to ensure that our scholarship and the work that and the research that we're doing, makes it to the global stage and is relevant within the global discourse on urbanization, particularly since, African urbanization is really dynamic, as the case may be. So when COVID happened, we had to repurpose the series of workshops. The model at the time was to have these colleagues engage with a number of mentors, working with them to develop their papers into publishable quality, and for them to then submit to various high impact journals. Like I said earlier, we were very pleased to have the support of senior faculty at the University of Sheffield, Professor Tom Goodfellow, Professor Michele Lancione, and Professor Abdulmalik Simon, as well as senior researchers from University of Lagos, Professor Ayodeji Olukoju and Professor Timothy Nubi, who graciously supported the process and supported the researchers so far. Because of COVID, we have, had to stretch things a bit. And so the first assignment was to then have the researchers start to reflect on COVID. How was COVID affecting them, their work, their cities, their country, and what did they think about, the urban turn as a result of the pandemic? And so all the participants of the cohort published these blog pieces that are available at the Center for Housing and Sustainable Development blog, COVID-19 in Africa blog series. We then had the first workshop, which was a virtual workshop in which the mentors shared on their experiences, spoke about some of the challenges of being a researcher anywhere in the world. And then we had quite an interactive session on the practicalities of, ensuring that research is critical, research is well done, and research is published. On the back of that, our colleagues started to develop their articles. The articles of the 12 participants are at different stages of completion, and we'll be hearing from some of the mentors and some of the participants today who will be telling us about their journey so far. What we found was that we started off looking to develop a cohort who will publish. That was our main objective, but it has been quite a process. In spite of the challenges, there have been added benefits. One of the members of the cohort has been able to win a fellowship working with one of the mentors, incidentally, not even the mentor she was paired with. And now, they're looking forward to doing some good work together. Some of the other mentors, Professor Oladuku, for example, onboarded with us much later in the process and has been quite supportive of the writing and practice process of the others that she was paired with. It has been quite a learning process for us as well, Lindsay and I, who convened the workshop, and I'll yield the floor back to Lindsay to speak a bit more about that and to push things forward. Thank you and welcome everybody.
Yeah, it certainly has been a big learning process, not least because of having to adapt it, the format and the outcomes and the process constantly in regards to COVID, which hit just as we got the funding. I think the online space has been quite good in some ways, in that, you know, we can all come together at certain points. There's obviously less cost involved, so we have been able to have a series of meetings. But I think the key thing that's come out of this, and that was feedback from the participants, as I'm sure we'll hear, is the lack of meeting people in person, and those really crucial spaces in between, the coffee breaks and the conversations, and just getting to know each other and building that sense of a cohort, just not just in the more static online space. So I think the workshop that we'll be finally hosting in person in a month's time, in July, will be a really crucial time to build those relationships and really draw out themes and shared interests amongst everyone who's been participating, and also to push forward work, and then have a space of proper reflection. But I think this time now would be great to hear from the participants about how they found the process. You know, what has been some of the real core struggles of carving out writing space, for instance, or navigating an online space, and what they hope to gain from being a participant in these writing workshops, and what they would still hope to gain as well. So I think if anyone would like to raise their hand, and then the host will enable you to speak and then turn on your video to reflect on some of the struggles and maybe some of something that you've learned or gained from this process. So yeah, just put up your hand and we'll go one by one to have some reflections.
I think Hikmat is here, so maybe she can keep the ball.
Yes, please.
Get the ball rolling. Mm.
Good morning, all.
Morning, hi.
Or afternoon.
Afternoon.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you to the initiators of this program. We are very grateful to our mentors. Yes, it's been a very good opportunity, and the various sessions that we have had have been very educating and informative. And I've noticed from the content of the proposed workshop in July that our peculiar difficulties in this part of the globe has been taken into consideration extensively, as reflected in the content of those proposed of that proposed workshop in July. And because of that, I am looking forward to it very much, and I believe other members of the team will also be looking forward to it, because it seems like it's going to be very educating for every one of us. The writing itself, the blog article for the COVID that was written in 2020 was very useful for me, and I believe for everybody else. And I've received a lot of comments on the article. It was equally a good training process. I've never written a blog article before that time. So, and I believe I probably won't be the only person in that situation. So it has also enabled us to reflect on angles that we could look at write-ups in relation to COVID-19 pandemic and other issues that might be pertinent at any particular point in time. As for the write-up for the journal article, I'm working very extensively on it, but I must admit that the inconsistencies and the created by the COVID-19 pandemic and suspension of academic activities and resumption after it, and being so busy catching up on all the things that has been suspended. So that has taken a serious toll on, my success of the work. But we are struggling. As at now, my introductory aspect is well concluded, and the analysis has been done extensively, although we are looking at some other ways of manipulating the data that we have so that it can have better contribution to knowledge. And I'm hopeful that we'll have something reasonable at the end of the day. I must express my appreciation to Professor Ola Uduku. I'm embarrassed, and I'm sure she knows, because I've not been getting in touch with her for some time. Also because I'm not making as the kind of progress I wanted on the paper. However, I must appreciate her initial contribution when I met with her at the inception. She went out of her way to sponsor the purchase of a textbook for us, which she said had contemporary theories on the aspect of the write-up that we're working on. So that was I found that very amazing. And then the first few talks we had with her, the kind of critiques that she gave pointed us in a very, good stead as to how to go about, the paper. And she made us appreciate the contemporary issues, the contemporary theories that we should be looking at as far as our study area is concerned. So that's my feedback. Once again, I say a very big thank you to all the organizers and our mentors. And I hope we can optimize this opportunity in full and be able to all have very wonderful and knowledge contributing publications at the end of the day. Thank you very much, Lindsay.
Thank you. And also thank you to you and everyone for your continued participation and giving your time to the process. It's very much appreciated. I think you brought up some really important aspects. And I think something about the COVID pandemic has been this rearranging of priorities, because suddenly everything was shifted. And I think it really caused a lot of change in everyone's daily life and also their work life. And I think Tom will respond to that, your comment about feeling embarrassed with your mentor, because that's a really key point, that shouldn't be something you feel with the mentor relationship, because it really can, we're all struggling, and also the process of writing is continuous. And I think Tom has some reflections on that. But is there anyone else that was one of the participants who would like to to make some reflections. I see we have Dr. Saracho as well. If you'd like to raise your hand, the host could let you speak.
I'm not sure if anyone is wanting to speak, but just to say whenever useful, I can chip in with a few
Yeah,
thoughts.
maybe, yeah, if you'd like
mind.
to respond to what we were just talking about, and then also your own reflections, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I prepared just a few things to say, I think, about mentoring, but also about what I think some of the challenges are from the perspective of a relative, outsider who's from the global north, based in an institution in the UK, has a little bit of research experience in Nigeria, but has engaged a lot with PhD students and other scholars in Nigeria over the years. And I think the first thing I wanted to say, I'll come back to some of the points about mentoring and the challenges involved. But firstly, just to reiterate some of the successes already in terms of even where people haven't written the paper that they set out to write, or maybe they haven't finished it, or maybe it's turned into something different. We have seen a number of people come through the program to get really great positions, fellowships, postdoctoral positions, several which we know about in the north of England. So I think that, and I know from speaking to some of them that the program has benefited them more generally, perhaps in terms of a level of confidence, people that they've met, and other aspects of their career development. And I think when thinking about this session, I was also just thinking about what some of the specific challenges perhaps are in working on and in Nigeria in urban studies. And it strikes me that Nigeria is quite unusual in the sense that you have great universities and lots of academic capacity, lots of scholarship, and quite a lot of global media attention to certain urban issues, particularly if you think about the attention to the waterfront evictions, if you think about NSARS and all of these things, and yet relatively little representation in kind of international journals, like compared to the size and the academic capacity that's there. And certainly some of the international journals based in the global north overrepresent a number of much smaller African countries that in some senses have been, the scholarship has been somewhat colonized by global north scholars writing on urban issues in those contexts, although that is starting to change. So I think with Nigeria, that's not the case in a way. It's actually underrepresented in those journals, and yet you have loads of Nigerian scholarship. So that I guess that part of the starting point for this process was, why is that the case, and how can all this Nigerian scholarship on urban issues be better represented in all these international journals? Because there's an unusual disjuncture there, given the academic capacity and all the kind of media attention, but relatively little in those journals. And I say this partly through just being on an editorial board of, on the one hand, African Affairs, and on the other hand, International Journal of Urban Regional Research, where I think in both cases, there's much less on Nigeria than you would expect, given the size and significance of the country. And I think one of the challenges, and this really came through in the workshop as well, that Nigerian urban studies scholars face. And it's hard to say, how much of this is specific to Nigeria, how much of it's specific to urban studies. But these different publishing cultures that exist, even within the global north, where a lot of these journals are hosted, and how that makes it difficult to know, to have, in a sense, the kind of cultural capital or the knowledge of how to approach publishing in these journals. Because in some parts of Europe, like Germany, for example, people are expected to publish huge amounts in their careers, like it's all about quantity. Whereas in other countries like the UK, there's much more of a focus on quality, high impact journals and working for a long time on a paper, and not necessarily having loads, but having these kind of very carefully selected quality publications. And that must be very bewildering for anyone coming outside Europe and trying to publish in journals that are based in Europe. In the US, you have a whole load of different issues again. So the expectations in terms of how much you're supposed to publish, how long you're supposed to spend, whether you should, how you should weight quality and quantity are really hard to navigate, I think, from anyone coming from one context to another context. And I think one of the things that also is hard to to learn in a way, and it's something that the mentorship can help with, and it's the case for all early career scholars going into their careers in academia, but even more so again if you're trying to access journals that are hosted elsewhere, is how you deal with the kind of process of peer review, communicating with editors, this sense that you perhaps can't contact the editors directly, or you have to be quite timid in your engagements with them as authority figures. Whereas, actually, I think we want to encourage people to be bold in terms of sometimes challenging reviews or contacting editors directly. And I think it's really difficult when you first get a set of reviews from a journal that is often full of negative things. We've all had this experience. And I know from the mentoring process, there were people who I was mentoring who submitted journals, and actually the reviews weren't that bad. Like I'd seen far worse, including for my own work. But it was really hard psychologically to deal with and to go back to the article and work on it after getting this anonymous, quite unpleasant sounding bits of feedback, even if they weren't that bad in a comparative perspective. So I think those kinds of things, like just, in terms of critical writing in these kinds of international journals, you have to work through, and it takes time to be able to handle those things, really. There's also very different expectations around what is a quality publication, from, I think in urban studies, there's maybe quite an extreme polarization between quite technical, often quantitative studies that could be very empirical and very rigorous, but quite technical. And then the critical, heterodox, theoretically engaged work that is often expected in a number of the critical urban studies journals. And so it sometimes feels like there's not very much in between, or certainly in the kind of internationally high-ranked journals, there's not that much in between those two things. And that's really difficult, again, if you're not sure how to pitch your writing, and you haven't necessarily got either those particular technical skills or familiarity with particular bodies of theory. So I think a lot of these things also create a kind of imposter syndrome that is, very common for people coming, particularly from the global south and trying to publish in these North-hosted journals and getting lots of often anonymous feedback. It's a very daunting process, and I think that came through clearly in the workshop and in engagements with some of the mentees. So I think the mentoring is to a large extent about helping people to overcome that, sharing one's own experiences, and also just as I started, really, like sharing the sense of this great potential that there is in Nigeria for urban studies scholarship. I mean, it's there anyway, but when it comes to this question of how to get more of that into international audiences, the potential is huge. And I think overcoming some of these challenges is often about confidence, about understanding the setbacks that everybody has, the time frames that are actually often really extended for everyone, and that's quite normal. So this question of feeling guilty, perhaps, if you haven't contacted your mentor, I can assure you, firstly, that the mentor will also be feeling guilty that they haven't been doing more. And I had, lots of those times where there were gaps in communication, and I contacted mentees and said, I'm sorry I haven't been in touch sooner, or it took me longer than I wanted to comment on something. But then they were also apologetic that they hadn't done more. And there's this whole sense of guilt, which there's a lot of in academia because of the expectations being the way they are. And so, yeah, I mean, I think the mentoring process, the important thing is that it's not sort of teaching, it's not didactic, it's not about someone telling you what to do, it's not about setting deadlines that you have to keep. It's really a two-way relationship as well. So it's a two-way relationship that should benefit the academy more broadly, right? So it's about also scholars, certainly from my perspective as someone based in a northern institution and from the global north, it's about understanding what the challenges are that writers in urban studies from Nigeria are facing to facilitate their career development and to facilitate the kinds of writing they want to do. And if people in those positions, in our positions, don't understand that, then it's not going to really change. So it's about our learning, and it's about our sharing of our own failures, as well as those kind of processes of helping people to plan, helping people to analyze the challenges they face and which ones might be easily overcome and which ones not, and evaluating people's achievements, their successes and their failures, and sharing our own experiences of failures and crises of confidence. So it's this kind of a relationship that's two-way that I think should be hopefully beneficial to people and to the academy more broadly, to really bring this like potential to full fruition. So I wish that I'd been able to meet more of the mentees one-to-one. Obviously, COVID has changed hugely this process, as has been said. And we know that people in some parts of Nigeria also had connectivity problems that not only affects their ability to engage in workshops, but their ability to write what they want and to research the way they need to. But I think, yeah, even with the level of engagement I've had, I want to see through as much as I can, because it's very clear that the potential is there, and we've already seen, you know, people coming and making significant career, you know, leaps really in some cases. So yeah, I don't know if nobody I've been mentoring directly is here, I don't think, but I'd be very happy to share any more thoughts or answer questions about the process.
That's really helpful, thank you. And yeah, just to say to people on that note of that guilt and shame about not doing enough, I had emails from all the mentors saying, oh, I haven't been, you know, in touch enough, or like I haven't been hearing, what more can I do, you know, I'd like to have more interaction. So it really is like a two-way thing, and I think it's it can be quite isolating to feel that you should be doing more, or there's that self-consciousness about what you should be doing, but we're all in the same boat. We're all we all have too much to do and feel like we're not fulfilling expectations. There's been a hand up for a while, so Uchichaku Namdi, if you'd like to say, yeah, you've had your hand up, so what would you like to say? So for the other participants, I see a few that have popped up. So Basirat is here. If you put your hand up, I think the host can let you speak. So it'd be great to hear from you, actually, your reflections on the process and any particular challenges, and then any positive outcomes as well. And also we have Prof. Nubi with us, so welcome. Thank you very much for attending and also supporting this process. And I'd also really welcome any comment or reflection from you on the challenges and the opportunity. Okay, so Basirat's put her hand up, so if the host could allow her to speak. And you can also put on your video.
Lindsay, I've seen there is one question in the Q&A as well, which is separate from the chat box. Can you see it?
Right, I will just go on. I'm just replying to.
It seems.
Ah, okay, there we go. So I'm not sure if Basirat, if you're having problems connecting, but okay, so how to get someone to mentor? Maybe Taibat, you know, is there any sort of mentorship process in place at Unilag, or what would you suggest to? Can you see the question there? So this is a PhD student from the Department of English and would love to be in touch with a mentor. So I'm just wondering if there is anything in place at Unilag. Oh, I think there's some connection issue with Taibat as well, unfortunately. So yeah, as maybe I could just briefly respond to that question. As I understand it, there are quite limited opportunities for mentorship, but I think, as Tom was saying, it's about being bold and getting in touch with someone, a senior scholar whose work you admire that you think is relevant to your own, and having the confidence to get in touch with them and ask them for comment on your work. And so I think it's something that you need to be quite proactive on often, because opportunities like this writing workshop are unfortunately quite rare, and we were limited to just 12 participants. So I think senior scholars are often, very welcoming to a pertinent inquiry, and will often, meet you for a chat. And now that online is so standard, you can have a conversation or really seek out that relationship yourself. But it does take quite a lot of confidence to make that approach. But I would say that most scholars are welcoming of that kind of interest in their work, and a lot of people are quite generous with their time and their insights as well. But I would say, just to make it very, very direct and very personal to that person, very specific, I mean, rather than just sort of a blanket help me, it's like, oh, I'm interested in this particular aspect of your work, I'd like to develop my work, what advice would you offer me on that? So a very specific and tailored request would often be met positively, I would say. Yes, Bazirat, please. Are you able to turn your audio on? Okay, yes, please turn Bazirat Oyalo on, please, the host. Or make her into a panelist.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Oh, now I can hear you, yes.
Okay, good day. Great presentations. So I'm the one that sent my question to the Q&A.
Yes.
Now, I was trying to get in, but I had issues with the. I'm working on an aspect of phonology of Nigerian English, and I've been doing something around that for a while now. Initially I worked on rhythm. I used the software to gather my data. I used SFS WASP then. But recently I began looking into the intonation of the Nigerian English, particularly in the aspect of Nollywood movies, films. And so I decided to use another software, Pratt, because I discovered that Pratt seems to have more coverage. So people seem to know more about Pratt than SFS that I used before. So, but I'm trying to see how I could package my work in such a way that it could fit into a high impact journal. Because I've been publishing for a while in local journals, and I know that it takes a little more than the normal to publish to get accepted in high impact journals. So I need someone to guide me through.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you can talk about your work really fluently, which is always helpful. And I think yeah, that's exactly what we've been tackling with this, is making what seems a big leap, but maybe it's just about a different narration from sort of local journals to international journals. But I don't know, Tom, do you have any particular general points on approaching journals?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, obviously it's not the field that I work in, that most of us here work in. So you never know what the norms are specific to an academic field. But I would say, as Lindsay mentioned before, that if you're trying to get published in kind of high impact international journals in any field, it's probably not a bad idea to, well, if you have particular journals in mind, one thing is just to look at the editors and the editorial board. And most of these international journals have a very international editorial board. Maybe there's even someone Nigerian on the board, even if it's not a journal based in Nigeria. That could be one route. You could contact that person or a person whose work you might know, whoever they might be on the editorial board. People are often very responsive to that because people do join these boards, you know, to help foster the development of that field and help very often help earlier career people enter scholarship. So I think looking at journal editorial boards, particularly because the editors themselves, you know, you can contact an editor directly, but the editorial board, you may be able to find someone closer to your subfield or interest who's working with the software or working on phonology. But the other thing you can do, as Lindsay said, is to think about, not think about journals directly, but think about scholars working in this area who are quite established, whether it's in Nigeria or elsewhere, and contact them and say, you know, because it sounds like what you're doing is quite specialist in terms of a particular software, particular aspect of phonology. If there are other people working in this specialism anywhere in the world, and you contacted them and said, you know, I'm in this field, I admire your work. Do you have any advice on getting published in this or this journal? And they would have the expertise on that. Most people would welcome that, you know, because if you work in a small bit of a field, you're always happy for other people who are interested in that to be in touch. So I think having that confidence, either to email people who are listed on journal websites or to just approach academic scholars in that field to ask for help, is not a bad idea. I don't know, Taibat, you might have been offline at the time, but Lindsay also asked, I think, whether there is a mentoring scheme within Unilag generally, because I know some universities have them like across disciplines where you can have a mentor if you want one. I don't know if they have that.
Yeah, so at the University of Lagos, we don't have a formal mentoring scheme, but there are different platforms that you know, promote and encourage mentorship. A lot of it is at the center level. For example, at the Center for Housing and Sustainable Development, Professor Nubi can speak a bit more about it, but we run this system where the work of the 8 clusters is led by a senior scholar and then is managed. We have cluster managers who are early career researchers, and across the various projects, there's always diversity, generational diversity in team composition. So for every project, there's a senior scholar, a mid-career scholar, there's an early career scholar who gets mentored along the way. The other thing, apart from boldness, is also taking advantage. I think there are lots of opportunities for early career researchers at this time. And so it's to take the opportunity to attend a lot of these online networking things and start to identify where you want to plug yourself in. Sometimes it's not a straight route to just sending an email to somebody and saying, oh, we have similar research interests and I would like you to support me, or I would like you to share some ideas about how you know, I can take advantage of these opportunities. Many of those emails are left unread and unanswered. So it's also good for you as a person that is coming up to identify, you know, the opportunities within those webinars, you know, free conferences and things like that. And also social media. I guess for a lot of us, you know, you're more likely to respond to somebody in your Twitter DM talking about your paper or something that they admire. And then, you know, that often opens up the conversation to you asking for more concrete academic support. So I'll yield the floor to Professor Nubi, who also happens to be the Director of Research and Innovation at the University of Lagos, to share a few reflections. Over to you, Prof. You're still muted.
Okay. Yeah, it's nice seeing your faces.
Yes, hello, hi.
Good morning.
Good to
Good
hear you,
morning.
Timothy.
Yeah, it's nice. Yes, yeah, it's nice seeing your faces. It's been an amazing session, very enlightening and great discussion. So many things. In the University of Lagos, let me start from where Professor Taibat Lancy, she has explained what is obtained in the center today. But like she said, there is no formal structure, but that structure is trying to emerge or to evolve through the establishment of the centers. Traditionally, the culture in University of Lagos is that you enter into the research career path through your PhD, and your PhD supervisor eventually becomes your mentor. That is the process here. Up till about 10 or 15 years ago, is the supervisors that do go to defend the PhD courseworks and thesis to a certain level. So it is seen as his work. And sometimes you see the candidate, the researcher, the junior researcher, or the student, the PhD candidate, staying outside while his supervisors is defending the work inside. So it's like apprenticeship pattern, and that is mentorship. So that has always been the pattern. Your supervisor is your mentor. So you have the first supervisor, you have the second supervisor. So you are brought into a project, and it becomes you become his mentee, and he's your mentor. That is the pattern. It is, I don't know the department, the person that asks the question is coming from, who supervised, but across the university today, that is the culture, that is the pattern. But it's being, it's evolving, like I said, through the center. So let me go to why are we not publishing in the area of urbanization, cities, and all the rest? Why is it that we don't have our papers in the journals or outlets of the global north? And that's a very serious question. You see, the truth is that when we look at pure science, we see a lot of Nigerians work there. When we look into medicine, because human physiology is the same all over the world. When you look at pure medicine, pure science, when you look at medicine, those things that have, that whatever the blood, the human temperature in Nigeria is the same as human temperature, an average temperature that's acceptable in Nigeria is the same in UK, is the same. The blood pressure is the same, you know, the blood circulation, the eye, everything the same. So those research outputs easily find a level of acceptance. Whatever is their finding, wherever they were being carried out, because it can be replicated. But the problem of cities is that cities are just heterogeneous. And there's something that De Soto pointed out in his work, The Mystery of Capital. De Soto pointed out one of the 5 mysteries, the mystery of information, missing information, the mystery of missing information, where De Soto has started that even the people that were living in the West now, they've forgotten about the history, where they were coming from, So it's so easy for an average American to come to Africa and see slum and say, and look so strange. But there was a time the entire Chicago was the slum capital of the world. Until Martin Luther King led the protest in 1968. So most parts of America were slum. Most parts of Shanghai in China were slum. But this generation of scholars, they were not aware of that history. So when anyone should write a paper on slum in Nigeria and the way to overcome the slum, it doesn't have an expression. There's no, within the context of global journal, the global North journals, they don't have expression because it's not a global problem. It's strange to them. They can't publish it in their journal. It's a local issue that we are still contending with. So most of the problem of urbanization in Nigeria today, when you are writing about water challenges, you are writing about electricity challenges, transportation challenges, these are things that are given in the global North. So when you go to the field and do a research on how to resolve transportation problem in Lagos, and you do it for 10 years, who will publish for you in American journal, in Canadian journal? It has nothing, there's nothing for, nothing, there's no, but that's just the truth. But another thing is that, okay, the last thing I want to mention is that, you see, many of us are always, like as a young researcher, I remember very well, in 2002, I presented my paper to an award-winning body, and a Nigerian was there to judge my presentation for that grant. And by the time I finished my presentation, he said I was disparaging my country by saying all these manner of problems that we are facing. He said I was disparaging my country. So you don't want to go into international forum and say your country, only 10% of the roads were tied. Only 5% electricity you have. So as a young scholar, that was planted into my heart that, look, whenever you are presenting outside there, you try as much as possible to play down the problem. So these are issues that are not necessarily, it's not as if, it's not that we know the researchers here are not working. But United Nations World Habitat 2006 said, look, global problem, local solutions. So if we are publishing in local journals and the policymakers are using our publications to bring about development, I believe that is where, but other issues that are common, like resilience, poor issues that we have in other parts of the country, then you can see publications in that direction. But that is actually in the recent time. I haven't identified the development goals and the sustainable development goals. So that's why the world is now listening to what is happening in different parts. And they are now saying that, look, we can't use one mode to measure all people. So, and I think that explains why we don't have more of our work being published in journals up there in the global North. So the difference in this ecosystem, the difference in our urbanization experience, the difference in the city structure, that is quite different from where they were reading it. So I believe that explains why we are what we are in terms of publishing.
Thank you, Prof. That's incredibly insightful. And I think that is why it's so crucial to support scholarship that comes from the place that it's written about, because there are so many misconceptions when people from outside come and then try and come for 2 weeks to Lagos and then summarize its urban problems and come with this more solution focus. Whereas, the scholarship that's so deep and so rich here, that it really can inform our understanding and should have much more of a platform on the international stage. And that's why qualitative research is so important as well, because to fill that gap of the quantitative information that is quite lacking and then also can be misinterpreted. So that the more qualitative social science approaches are so crucial to provide informed knowledge about what's going on in our cities. And then also, that very negative perception of crucial to always take that critical perspective to address those really negative perceptions. And it's it can be quite a pressure of addressing all of those misconceptions. But thank you very much for your insights and support to this process. Basirat, you've written some very key points in the chat, but if you'd like to just summarize some of those or give your perspective, that would be really welcome.
Thank you, Litze.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really glad to be here, and I'm so glad to hear from Professor Tom Goodfellow, who has been a very strong mentor to some of us on this side of the world. I think that, as I've written, there are so many challenges. I mean, all scholars face challenges one way or the other in getting publishing. It's especially as one tries to find one's feet in the field of urban planning or the urbanization or whatever field that one is emerging from. But I think that when we look at in terms of publishing, I know that we experience a lot of rejections based on the fact that what we want to put out there is not directed to the right publishing house. So sometimes that could be a factor. So I think it's important to be able to identify the focus of each journal and tailors one's work directly to the interest of the journal, or one should find a journal that is directly relevant to one's work. And I find it useful when special issues announcements are made to submit to the journal for the first time using the call for special issues. I don't know, maybe they are more open, but it appears to be quite successful, And I also would recommend writing to the editors in advance and pitching one's article ahead of submission, so that one can have that one-on-one positioning to say, oh, go ahead and submit and things like that. Then I want to also quickly share an experience that I have with a publishing house in the US. So I contacted them in advance and pitched the work I wanted to submit, and I was encouraged to submit it. And so I worked so hard to have the paper properly done, and then I sent it for review. And for close to 3 months, I didn't hear anything back. And so just 2 weeks ago, I wrote the editor again to say, I've not heard from you and all. And what he told me was that they've had so much difficulty finding a reviewer for my paper in Nigeria. And the last sentence the editor wrote was, it seems Nigerian researchers are not willing to review these days, And I was like, oh my God, that was new. I mean, So I replied that back that maybe for future, for other papers, they could let me know, then I can connect them to, researchers that might be willing to review papers. But that might be a problem that we are not aware of. I mean, so it's like there's this whole network of support that is actually required, both from within Nigeria and also from Nigerians outside, that are seen as experts in this field, and their own willingness to also support these processes. So that just occurred to me now. But in any case, I think most of the work has to be done by the individual researcher. Prof. Lansing has talked about seizing opportunities. There are so many opportunities, but they are there and will not come unless one is self-motivated to take them and to, do all that it takes to work with them. Getting to rework a paper, I've done reworks, like 3-4 reworks just to get published, and it takes so long. So I just feel that, well, if I have to do this to get the paper up to standard, and the truth is that at the end of all that process, one feels quite happy that because the work has improved so much. So it's not so easy, but mentoring helps, taking opportunities, having a network of people that are also ready to support and peer review is also important. So that's why I really want to appreciate the initiative of Lindsay and Prof. Taibat for putting the writing workshop together that I've been on. I could never have met people like Tom Goodfellow and Abdulmalik Simon without that kind of networking opportunities. So thank you. That's my bit for now.
Thank you, Professor. And maybe I think that's a really good point about special issues, because it's a very defined and direct calls where you can see that your work's appropriate. In terms of these opportunities and other opportunities offered by universities and journals, how do you tend to hear about them? How do you keep on top of the opportunities that are arising and hearing about special issues? Could you just say something about that?
Okay, so in that case, I mean, something that really helps is when to send to mailing lists of as many publishing houses as you can, reasonably find. So if you're on the email list and they have a special issue popping up, they would send you, a mail on that, and then you can then do the necessary follow-up. If you already have a paper, you already have a study that aligns, or you can reasonably complete a study in the time frame. So that is what I would recommend.
Yeah, mailing lists are really crucial, and there are also those forums like Critical Geography Forum and things which people tend to put calls out on. So whatever your discipline is, I'm sure there are these mailing lists. Some of them can be quite heavy, but there's lots of things that come up there. So I think Tom, put your hand up.
Okay, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, and also being visible in the academic world, so to say, in terms of the research gates, academia.edu, even putting one or two lines on your research interest on your Gmail or email accounts. Mm-hmm. I've experienced that where someone has contacted me to please contribute to a book series is writing, and he did that through ResearchGate. just because he was able to look through what I, put on there, and he contacted me. So that is also very helpful.
Yeah, and things like actually verifying your Google Scholar profile, or obviously LinkedIn, just to sort of, so people can really triangulate what you're interested in. So yeah, Tom, I think you had your hand up, and then Taibat, please.
I think Taibat had her hand up first. So Taibat.
Okay, so please.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what Dr. Basira said about reviewers not being many reviewers from Nigeria. Two things. First, it's usually very difficult to get somebody whose paper got a desk rejection, and maybe 2 weeks after you're inviting them to review somebody else's paper. That happens a lot. Or you, just because somebody has published with the journal, every paper from Nigeria that comes in, that person is then invited to review. So it kind of gets tiring after a while. So we need to open up the space for more people to publish, so that there's a bigger pot, a bigger pool of reviewers. The other thing I wanted to talk about was methodological shifts. And I will speak from personal experience as an urban planner trained in Nigeria. Urban planning is seen as a technical discipline in Nigeria. So you learn, how to go about the process, the statistical data collection methods, issues around design, drawing, very technical aspects of the discipline. And you progress, you get into academia, and you find that you need to publish. And your training is quite narrow as to respond to the technical aspects of the profession. Whereas many of the journals are more open, to the maybe people side, the social aspects, the other, framings of the discipline. That becomes problematic when you start to publish. So you're publishing, your work is important, it's relevant, but your methods do not align with what the editorial board, for example, may be familiar with. And that brings up the issue of you learning on the job. If you are looking to publish in a particular journal, it's also important for you to kind of have a look at the kinds of papers that are already published in the journal, the types of methodological approaches, how the arguments are made and things like that, before you decide whether your paper is a right fit. So it also brings up the issue of we need to open up our learning curve. We need to be open to new ways of doing things and new ways of learning, because we are an evolving society, and with more emphasis on multidisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity, it will be very difficult to get published in journals that are responding to these multidimensional issues. Over to you, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Ty. But I think that's really important about the methodological point, and the way the journals vary a lot in how much they expect you to discuss your methodology, as well as the kind they expect you to use. And while in some fields, there's this kind of bias towards quantitative methods, in some of the critical urban studies scholars, it's very journals, it's almost the opposite, So you would have to justify very carefully using quantitative methods. And this is something that people may not be aware of, because you only find out about it over time. I just wanted to say a couple of things. One was to mention, since we've had some talk in the chat about different journals and initiatives that they have for scholars. I mentioned the journal African Affairs, which is not an urban studies journal, so it's not necessarily appropriate for every kind of article in this field, but they do publish on urban issues, and I think they're seeking to publish more. But also they started an initiative that was to try and facilitate more African scholarship from African authors based on the continent in the journal, which was almost like a pre-peer review mentoring. And I was asked to help with this, so to read some papers that they didn't think were ready to send to peer review because the editors were worried that they just would be rejected, not because there wasn't potential, but because there was almost too much work needed from the perspective of the journal style and so on. And so the idea was to have a mentor who would help them work the paper up before it was even submitted to peer review. Now, I don't know if they're still running that because I didn't hear as much from them as I would have hoped. I did work with one paper, but then never heard more about it. But I'm also just putting a link in the chat to the journal page because they do have there some quite useful information about different kinds of structure that might be expected in primarily qualitative work, because it's a mostly qualitative journal, and some things about style that I think are quite helpful. And obviously it is, this is aimed very much at, I think, bringing in more scholarship from the African continent. But also I just wanted to make this point that something that came up in the things Bazarat and others were saying, you know, the amount of review you get through these international journals of your paper, the amount of criticism, frankly, you get, and the amount you're expected to work on your papers is a shock to everyone, I think, as they come into their academic career, because you do get rounds and rounds of criticism. And this is just the way scholarship has developed, the way the academy has developed in certainly the US and the UK, where, you know, disproportionate numbers of journals are based, that you're expected to deal with this kind of criticism. You don't always have to do what the critics say, but I think realizing that that's something that actually everyone goes through, and that you are expected to revise and revise and revise. And as Bazarat said, at the end, you usually feel, well, that's improved a lot, but it is quite a painful process. And I think it's getting longer and longer because the pandemic has made things harder and journals are stretched and the turnaround times are longer. I remember my supervisor saying to me, oh, you know, it can take 1.5 years from writing your paper to it coming out. And I was shocked by this, you know, but of course, in reality, it can take much longer. And I think just recognizing that that's normal. So you don't have to feel guilty. You don't have to feel guilty if certain stages take a long time, like it takes you 6 months to deal with the revisions to a paper. I'm finding that, you know, that happens to me. It happens to a lot of people. And it's almost like you're expected to work so much on these papers that if you're not sick of the sight of them by the time it gets published, if you don't literally never want to see them again, then you probably haven't worked on them enough. Because I find by the time they're like accepted and considered ready for those kind of journals, you really are bored of them and you don't want to think about them anymore. So I'm just saying this to make the point that that is right or wrong, or whether we like it, the way these international journal works is that they come back at you often again and again, and you're expected to revise and revise. And that is normal. You don't have to feel guilty or like you're doing something wrong if that's what ends up happening.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, we just reminder we're coming to the end of the session, but I'd just like to thank everyone who's contributed, and again to Tom and of course Taibat and Prof. Nubi. It's been a really great reflection, and it makes me really motivated for the workshop in July as well. And also I think a key part of the workshop will be looking at how to move forward, you know, beyond when that funding ends and when the process sort of comes to a close, how we can continue in this work, because I think it's so crucial, and we've really identified some ways that there can be these great reciprocities between not just Sheffield and the Centre for Housing Sustainable Development and UNILAG, but between, you know, UK and Nigerian urban scholars. And it's something I'm really keen to work on. So there's lots of links in the chat. So I think that will also be part of the recording, but really make a note of those, because there are calls that will come out, and also lots of resources as well. So we'll try and find a way to collate all of those as well for anyone who's interested. So yeah, Taibat, do you have any other closing remarks?
Just to thank the participants and the members of the cohort, as well as the mentors, starting from Tom and those who are unable to join us today, and looking forward to engaging more, as we said, and seeing those papers when they're published.
Yes, and Prof. Nubi, you have your hand up. Do you have a final word before we sign off?
Okay. Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you, Lizzie, and Professor Lansing for this work. I'm so glad of the leading role, and all the questions that on mentorship, on publishing, on methodology, all this is telling us is that the questions and comments are helping us to redefine our role and actually understand clearly that the center in University of Lagos has a leading role to play, not only in Nigeria, but in Africa. Because first and foremost, we must always remember that we are the Arua Center of Excellence for urbanization and habitable cities. So every university in Africa, they look towards the center for leadership. So the methodology, the need to shift in methodology, all these things will come from us. So, and I'm happy that we're already working with Lindsay, we're working with Tom there to really bring this. So it's a lot of responsibility rests on our shoulder to change the narrative, to make this journey smoother and better for early career and future researcher. Dr. Taibat, you are once a mentee, but today you are a mentor, and a lot of responsibility as a director of that center. A lot of responsibility lies on your shoulder. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Yeah, thank you. And I've no doubt you can take up the responsibility. Yes, so I will look forward to continuing this conversation, and thank you everyone for attending. So bye for now.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Also, thank you to the host. You've been really great. Thank you.
Thanks, and enjoy the rest of the conference, everyone.